Good morning, everyone. I was pinged to put together a quick demo on some of the work that we've done with Arbitrum DAO and Open Source Observer. So I'm going to share a few slides that give you an overview of some of the stuff that we built. We'll also talk about some of the new things that we have on the docket and that we're really excited to do with the Arbitrum community. There we go. My name is Carl. I'm one of the founders of Kariba Labs. Our first project is called Open Source Observer. What we're trying to do is create basically like a dune for public goods, or a set of open public data sets that will allow anyone who cares about measuring impact in the Arbitrum ecosystem to quickly query, discover, and generate metrics that they can use to measure impact and monitor projects over time. One of the things that we know every ecosystem cares about is getting these two numbers up. So every ecosystem cares over the long term about increasing the developer numbers. So you see on the x-axis here, the number of monthly active developers. You can define that however you like, but effectively, every ecosystem is in a race to get and sustain the number of developers that are building in their network. And then on the other axis, on the y, networks are looking to increase the number of active users, people that are coming, doing things on chain, ideally using more than one application, and effectively increasing the amount of economic value that they bring on chain. So again, these are the two metrics that every ecosystem cares about. And the way that we look at this problem is that there's a lot of parallels you can draw with baseball or sports about 20 years ago. So if anybody is familiar with the Michael Lewis book and movie Moneyball, the situation in baseball 20 years ago is that you had, or actually for a century, up until 20 years ago, is that you had scouts and analysts who were looking at really, really bad metrics to try and predict which players would be good to have on your team. There was a lot of subjective assessment. There was a lot of kind of gut feel. I've been doing this for 50 years. You have to trust my judgment here. And the result was that there were some things that were kind of sacred cows that no one was willing to actually kick the numbers on and stress test. And so there was a few quants that came in and basically said, actually, the metrics you've been using are not predictive of anything. Let's come up with some better ones. And through that, they were actually able to help a team with a very, very small budget go from being last to making it all the way to the playoffs and doing quite well. And that ushered in a new era for sports statistics, where people were using data alongside subjective assessment to make better decisions about how to allocate funding, build better teams, and become more competitive. So we think the same analogy applies here to funding open source teams, to funding network growth. The big difference is that this is not a zero-sum game. This is a positive-sum game. We want to grow the pie. We want to get more developers to come. We want more users to come and do an increasing amount of their activity on-chain. So that's what Open Source Observer is here to help you accomplish. Specifically, the thesis is that better visibility will lead to better funding outcomes. You see this in capital markets. You see this in sports. You see this in marketing campaigns. But what we're trying to do is unify on-chain and off-chain data sets and make it so that grant ecosystems can use that data to identify metrics and deploy capital more effectively. What's kind of behind the scenes? Effectively, there is one big open data pipeline that we are maintaining. Not only is like the data that we're using fully public and publicly available, but also the infrastructure that we use for indexing, the data warehouse itself. All of this is open. Anybody can connect a new data set to it. Any analyst can come in, build their own models, and add them directly to the pipeline. You can fork the entire pipeline. And so on top of this, we have a number of developers as well as data science teams that are using these metrics and creating applications as well as grant programs on top of it. But right now, there's a number of data sources that we integrate. So we look at GitHub data. We look at the software supply chain from package managers like NPM and PyPy. We also look at social graphs like Farcaster and Lens, and then obviously lots of raw blockchain data as well. We're trying to add new networks as quick as they spin up. Obviously, there are a lot of layer 2s which are being added every day now, And so we are trying to create a index data set that captures all of that and then allows developers to connect to an API and data scientists to work directly in a playground to make sense of all that data. Effectively, the feedback loop that we want to catalyze is one where ecosystems are selecting projects, identifying metrics that are relevant to those projects, and then allocating funding against those metrics, and then monitoring over time which funding strategies lead to better results. And if you iterate on this, you get a very good feedback loop that hopefully will allow you to deploy funding more effectively over time. We have 2 case studies that we did with Arbitrum a couple months ago with an initial grant from Plurality Labs. We created some initial metrics for measuring sustainable user growth, measuring developer growth, and mapped more than 300 projects. The last slide, I think. So you can read more about those contributions here. We have a new grant that's just starting up with Gitcoin and Karma to continue this work and bring more projects into Open Source Observer. And then if you want to contribute, we have a lot of different pathways for contributors, both adding project data, data scientists to connect and create their own metrics, and then developers to connect to the API and use it for their application. So there you go. That's my contact information. We'd love to hear from you, and have a great day.